we produce for Hispanic, for Black, for Asian. It's 9 times greater, the percentage gain, than it was under, in 3 years, than it was under 8 years of the 2 of them, to put it nicely. 9 times more. Now, somebody lives, I have not heard the numbers or the statistics that you're saying, but they're making a tremendous amount of money economically. We saved it. And I saved it again a number of months ago when oil was crashing because of the pandemic.
Okay.
We saved it. We got, say what you want about relationship, we got Saudi Arabia, Mexico, and Russia to cut back, way back. We saved our oil industry, and now it's very vibrant again.
All
And
right.
everybody has very inexpensive gasoline. Remember
Vice
that.
President Biden, your response, and then we're going to have a final question for both of you.
My response is that those people live on what they call fence lines. He doesn't understand this. They live near chemical plants that in fact pollute, chemical plants and oil plants and refineries that pollute. I used to live near that when I was growing up in Claymont, Delaware. And all the more oil refineries in Marcus Hook and the Delaware River than there is any place, including in Houston at the time. When my mom get in the car and when there was first frost to drive me to school, turning the windshield wiper, there'd be oil slick in the window. That's why so many people in my state were dying and getting cancer. The fact is, those frontline communities, it doesn't matter what you're paying them. It matters how you keep them safe. What do? And you impose restrictions on the pollutions the pollutants coming out of those fence line communities.
Okay, I have one final question.
Would he close down the oil industry?
It falls.
Would you close
it
down the
falls-
oil
By
industry?
the way, I would transition from the oil industry, yes.
Oh,
I will
that's a big
transition.
statement.
It is a big statement
That's a big
because
statement.
I would stop
Why would you do that?
because the oil industry pollutes significantly.
I see.
Here's the deal, but you
That's a
can't
big
do that.
statement.
Well, if you let me finish the statement, because it has to be replaced by renewable energy over time. And I'd stop giving to the oil industry, I'd stop giving them federal subsidies. He won't give federal subsidies to the gas, excuse me, to solar and wind.
Yeah.
Why are we giving it to oil industry?
We actually do
All
give
right.
it to solar and wind.
We
And
have
that's
one
maybe the
final
biggest
question.
statement in terms of business. That's the biggest statement.
Okay,
Because
we have
basically
one
what he's
final
saying
question,
is he is
Mr.
going to
President.
destroy the oil industry. Will you remember that, Texas? Will you
Okay.
remember that, Pennsylvania, Oklahoma?
Vice President Biden, let me give you 10 seconds to respond, and then I
Ohio.
have to get to the final question. Vice President Biden.
He takes everything out of context. But the point is, look, we have to move toward a net zero emissions. The first place to do that by the year 2035 is in energy production, by 2050 totally.
All right. One
Is he gonna
final
get
question
China to
both
do
of
it?
you. No, we're finished with
Is
this.
he
We
going
have
to
to
get
move on
China
to
to
our
do it?
final question. We
No,
have to
I'm
move
going
on
to
to our final
rejoin Paris
question.
Accord and make China abide by what they agreed to.
All right,
That'll
this
cost you
is
$1
about
trillion.
leadership, gentlemen. And this first question does go to you, President Trump. Imagine this is your inauguration day. What will you say in your address to Americans who did not vote for you? You'll each have 1 minute, starting with you, Mr.
We have to make a country totally successful as it was prior to the plague coming in from China. Now we're rebuilding it and we're doing record numbers, 11.4 million jobs in a short period of time, et cetera. But I will tell you, go back. Before the plague came in, just before, I was getting calls from people that were not normally people that would call me. They wanted to get together. We had the best Black unemployment numbers in the history of our country. Hispanic, women, Asian, people with diplomas, with no diplomas, MIT graduates, #1 in the class. Everybody had the best numbers. And you know what? The other side wanted to get together. They wanted to unify. Success is going to bring us together. We are on the road to success, but I'm cutting taxes and he wants to raise everybody's taxes and he wants to put new regulations on everything. He will kill it. If he gets in, you will have a depression, the likes of which you've never seen. Your 401ks will go to hell and it'll be a very, very sad day for this country.
All right. Vice President Biden, same question to you. What will you say during your inaugural address to Americans who did not vote for you?
I will say, I'm an American president. I represent all of you, whether you voted for me or against me. And I'm going to make sure that you're represented. I'm going to give you hope. We're going to move. We're going to choose science over fiction. We're going to choose hope over fear. We're going to choose to move forward because we have enormous opportunities to make things better. We can grow this economy. We can deal with the systemic racism. And at the same time, we can make sure that our economy is being run and moved and motivated by clean energy, creating millions of new jobs. And that's the fact. That's what we're going to do. And I'm going to say, as I said at the beginning, what is on the ballot here is the character of this country: decency, honor, respect, treating people with dignity, making sure that everyone has an even chance. And I'm going to make sure you get that. You haven't been getting it the last 4 years.
All right. I want to thank you both for a very robust hour and a half, a fantastic debate. Really appreciate it. President Trump, former Vice President Joe Biden, thank you to Belmont University for hosting us tonight. And most importantly, thank you to those watching tonight. Election
Dream Team.
How y'all doing?
Hey, Mike. Hey, yo.
Hey, what's up? How are you?
Do I look? I want to look centered.
Well, you're live right now, so
Oh.
we're in there. We went live. They went overtime, so now we're on time. How are you?
Good. How are you guys?
I'm doing good.
Man, all right, everybody. So here we are. We jumped right into. We usually do some kind of intro and everything else, but the debate went past 7:30. I don't feel bad now. You know, sometimes I go over time on the morning show. I'm like, oh man, I went over by a minute or two. But good evening to everybody. Welcome here to Converge Media, and let me bring my colleagues, my esteemed colleagues, up here on the screen. Joined by Mike Davis of the South Seattle Emerald, and joined by Julia Jessie of Converge Media. How are you guys this evening?
Doing good. Doing good.
All right, good stuff. Good stuff. So we're here again. This was the third debate. We met up for the first debate. The second debate, I think we met up, but it was like, you know, bad. Nobody watched either of these town halls. This is the final debate, and I got a bunch of different topics to talk about here. We talked about COVID, we talked about Ukraine, talked about South Korea, Obamacare. We talked about some kind of stimulus bailout, talked about the minimum wage, immigration, race in America, leadership. What are they going to say? Inauguration day, some of everything. But before we jump into these different topics, I'm going to start with you, Mike Davis of the South Seattle Emerald. What was your takeaway from tonight's debate?
I think my big takeaway from tonight's debate was the way that Joe Biden kept trying to talk about bringing people together. I think that that's something that he really hit on and did a great job with, because Trump took shots at the Democrats every single opportunity that he had, while Biden talked about being the president of Americans as a whole. And he talked about trying to bring everyone together as we move forward. And I think he scored some major points there.
I think, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I totally agree with Mike. I mean, we really saw Joe Biden step in there and really be bipartisan. I also think it was a clear win for Joe Biden. And I think during this debate, we actually got some issues addressed. We actually could see what plans were to come. And I'm really excited. I think this, if nothing else, would help to kind of, secure some voters who were kind of on the line.
Okay, so you say a win for Joe Biden, but is this like, a come up as well for Trump? Did Trump have a better performance as well?
Yeah, it seemed like he was on some tranquilizers or something tonight. I mean, he was very, very, very calm in a Trumpster kind of way. I think if we think about the performance of Trump, I mean, it just was a lot more scaled back than we saw him the first time. But I think more importantly, Joe Biden's performance was just on point. He attacked really critical issues. He spoke about the mistakes that he's made in his 47 years and the things that he wants to rectify and how he plans to rectify that. And I think for our sitting president, he has made a number of mistakes and has not owned up to that. And I think when we're talking about really positioning and moving America forward, it's okay to make mistakes. But we really need to be able to just address those and decide how we're going to move beyond them. So a great performance from Joe Biden tonight. I really don't even want to call it a performance. I really feel like we actually got to see what this beacon of hope that we all so desperately need right now.
All right. All right. So, first thing that jumped out, and one of the things that's top of mind across America is COVID. And, it's a lot of questions. Actually, the COVID discussion took up a lot of time. It was almost like 25, 27 minutes in the discussion about COVID. What were your thoughts on that? We'll start with you, Julia. I mean, when Trump was like, yeah, they were like, well, you called Fauci an idiot. And Trump was like, yeah, but that's my guy. We still get along well. But what were some of your thoughts as far as how President Trump addressed COVID? I know one of the things he was like, look, man, and we talked about this before, is it seems like Trump is all about, we're going towards this vaccine. We want to get to a vaccine as fast as possible. And Biden is more like, man, we got to do more to help people today.
I think it's important to state for the record that any president would have a challenging time. Any leader is going to have a challenging time managing this pandemic. I mean, it's not an easy task. And so I don't want to sit here and say what should have been done and not been done. But I will say this, Donald Trump's tactic to attack Dr. Fauci is like attacking Michael Jordan on his basketball record. I mean, this guy has been an expert in disease and infectious control since the 1980s. So it's unreal to think that this guy is an idiot. And I think Donald Trump actually said that. So that was just a stupid move overall. I really, really, really thought that Joe Biden really came at us with some facts and what he wants to do, right? He really talked about, he said something about, we need to be able to walk and chew at the same time. And that's important, right? We need to be able to open businesses, but we need to have some structure. We need to be able to social distance. He talked about rapid testing and really implementing that. He talked about contact tracing. And we know that, our government right now has not really been talking about some of these. He's really talking about wearing a mask. And I think Donald Trump is just really downplaying the seriousness of the virus. We're looking at how the red states are responding to the blue, and I don't want to make it like that, just as Joe Biden was saying, but the record will reflect that a lot of the red states that have not been following the strict guidelines outlined by the CDC are, having virus peaks. And I think it's important to realize that, states like New York, who are, considerably closing down and following those protocols, are seeing a better turnout for the American people. We cannot say that 240,000 Americans dead is responding to the pandemic well. So kudos to Joe Biden for at least coming with a plan.
Right. And before I hop to you, though, Mike, the whole country is basically like, it's all the way up. The whole country is lit. If you look at the map, you know what I'm saying? So, I mean, yeah, there are some states that people would say are traditionally red states, if you want to put it like that, that are experiencing an increase. But I mean, the whole country is experiencing an increase right now.
You heard what Joe Biden said, and really a lot of the experts. Donald Trump talks about this virus and he keeps saying over and over again, it's going to be ready in a few weeks. It's going to be ready in a few weeks. This virus is not going away that soon. I mean, even if a virus is available till 2021, we're still going to be social distancing and wearing masks till 2022. So we have a long way to go. And I think it's just, he's really giving the American people unrealistic expectations of what this vaccine could or could not do.
All right. And Mike, I'm throwing it over to you, but just for people that are watching, we're doing something new right here. And this is what happens when they leave me by myself at night. I put in there into the comments a link. So if anybody wants to join in our discussion here on screen, and especially people that disagree with you guys, I put a link in there. You know what I'm saying? Just click the link. We'll put you in the back room here. Please, let's keep it clean so we can continue to do this. Don't be talking crazy. So it's the link in the comments across all platforms. You click the link, and we'll see if we can fit you in up here. Mike, your thoughts as far as the COVID topic?
Yes. Well, just jumping real quick back to one of Julia's points, I think that Trump was a lot more measured. I think that he kind of took his foot off the gas pedal as far as the talking over each other. Some of that was due to the mic being muted, but I do think that he had much more composure this time around. And I think that hurt him tremendously, especially when we look at this debate on COVID. It might have served him to really just jump all in Joe Biden's grill and to kind of divert from the issues, because when he really settled down to answer direct questions, he didn't have a lot of direct answers. And Julia already kind of went through Joe Biden and his plan and his approach and like the specific things that Joe Biden wants to do. And Joe Biden pointed out numerous times, Trump doesn't have a plan. And when the conversation went back to Trump, he didn't have a plan. And he talked about getting the virus himself, and then boom, he was better. And he talked about how his son got the virus and how strong kids' immunity is, but he never really addressed the seriousness of the virus. He never really addressed the fact that 200,000 Americans have already died, and we're projected to possibly lose another 200,000. He keeps brushing off the seriousness. He really wants to reopen. He cares a lot more about the economy than he does about the health of the citizens. And by taking that measured approach and allowing Biden to talk and really coming back himself, he really showed his cards as to how he doesn't have a plan and the lack of seriousness that has led to a lot of deaths in our country.
All right. Any other? Oh, go ahead, Julia.
Well, I want to put on the record, I am a survivor of COVID-19. I caught COVID in June. I was out for 3 weeks. And it was difficult, right? And I'm also an American person who has lost family members due to COVID-19. At the beginning of the pandemic in April, rest in peace to Veronica Norman, my husband's grandmother. And so when you talk about, Donald Trump was saying like, oh, I had COVID and now I have this immunity and I don't know if it's going to last for a few months or forever. That's just not true. It's not true. And it's unsafe to talk about you have this immunity. I know people personally who have emailed me personally to say I had COVID-19 not once but twice. You can catch COVID again. When we talk about viruses and the strand changing, it's like saying you can't get the flu more than once. We don't know what this virus is going to do. And it's so dangerous to say that people can't get it again. And we really need to minimize our interactions. We need to wear masks. We have to social distance. We have to do everything we can to not only protect, our elders in the vulnerable population, but everybody else. And so this whole, immunity thing, I just thought was like the most horrible thing he said all night.
Yeah, well, the other thing that I think that is probably missing in that conversation is, there's a lot of people who get COVID and they do survive and life does go on, but they're scarred for life. They have all kinds of other issues. And that was something that wasn't really talked about. It was like people die or either you get over it and you have immunity. And there's a lot of people that get COVID, they do live, they do survive, but they're changed forever by it. Jumping over here, I got all these topics. Somebody had brought up something right here. I was going to talk about it a little later, but let's jump into it right now. It said, what are your thoughts about the states deciding about the minimum wage? That was something where Biden said that he was for the $15 an hour nationally, and Trump was like, states have to decide that for themselves. I'll start with you, Mike.
Yeah, I thought that was extremely interesting because that's something that also comes up here locally where, Seattle has increased the minimum wage and there's this whole argument about small businesses be forced to close. And there's no actual data that says that small businesses will be forced to close with minimum wage increases. But one really important thing that I heard from Joe Biden was he said, yes, we should increase the minimum wages, but he also said that we need to support small businesses and we need to be able to distribute federal funds to support those businesses. And I think that goes to the larger issue of, Trump is always down for big business bailouts and he wants to bail out all of the major corporations. But when it comes time to bail out the actual people and the actual citizens, he always wavers and it doesn't happen. And this is one of those situations. Like, yes, we can increase that minimum wage, and we can also step in and support those businesses to make sure that they have the resources that they need. Trump also thinks that this could be a state-by-state decision when we really need the federal government to step in. And Joe Biden made some really great points. Nobody in this country should be making $6 or $7 an hour. Nobody in this country should have to work multiple jobs and still be living in poverty. These are things that need to be addressed. And during Trump's 3 years, I mean, he always jumps on Biden and Obama for what they haven't done in their 8 years. Well, this is something that Trump hasn't done in his time in office. And I think Joe Biden made another really great point, and it might have been later on, but he said where he grew up, people didn't live off the stock market. So it's not really fair to judge our economy strictly based off how well the stock market is doing. And I think that this comes into play here too with the minimum wage. You know, these people aren't living off the stock market. These are people that have to go to work every single day, and they need support.
Right. Well, Julia, before I throw it over to you on this question, you know, both of us went to college down south, and you know, like right here in Seattle, a gallon of gas is like $3 something, and you probably in Virginia, North Carolina. I was just down in Texas, $1.85. You know, the cost of living is different in different states across the country. So does the President Trump have a point in that different states should be able to set their minimum wage?
You know, I'm kind of divided on the issue. You know, in addition to doing this in my media thing, I also own a small business. I own a construction company that provides flagging services, and I hire a lot of skilled labor. And so, you know, I do understand that sometimes, you know, placing that minimum wage cap on there can be difficult for small business owners who just don't have it. So I'm a bit divided. I don't know. I think there has to be a state regulated mandate because, you know, I don't know. I'm really torn on the issue, honestly. I do feel like everyone deserves a decent wage. Me personally, as a small business owner, $15 would be the bare minimum that I would provide to one of my employees, one of my workers, because, you know, I'm also here in Washington, D.C., and that's not enough for them, right? You know, when I have to give them minimum wage, that's not enough. But I do appreciate Joe Biden talking about bailing out small businesses and really helping them out. If they can get that PPP, that payroll protection plan, and they can infuse capital into their business to, in turn, get the American people back to work at a decent wage, absolutely. And I think a lot of small businesses would jump on the opportunity to do so. So if we're going to raise the minimum wage, we do need to put small businesses in position to do that. It'd be great to have a government subsidy to support that, maybe in addition to some state regulated funding.
Right. And this is the point right here that let me bring myself back into the picture, is that, you know, all across the country, different, you know, whether it's municipalities, counties, states, they are setting their minimum wage, you know, but the federal minimum wage was like $7.50, which is like sitting here in Seattle. If you're like, yeah, man, I'm gonna offer you a job, $7.50, people be like, so I'm volunteering. That's that's a stipend. And you know, just an example is like Dick's. Probably like a year ago, they had something. I think they were hiring at $16 or $17 an hour, and you know, with all these benefits where you get like a vacation, you get like tuition, you get childcare and everything else. And I had a friend who was down in Raleigh, and the city of Raleigh was hiring a job, and it was like $16 an hour. And people were like, yeah, man, send it. They were all posted it on email. I mean, on Facebook, like, man, the city of Raleigh, this is a good job. $16, $17 an hour. And, you know, I went in there and I was like, man, you know, the local burger joint here is paying $18 an hour. Oh, yeah. So, you know, it's America does vary as far as, you know, what things cost and everything else. But I mean, what President Trump said was that by raising the federal, let's just put it in proper context, by raising the federal minimum wage, by doubling it, basically, it's around $7, I believe, right now. I'm sure one of our informed people watching will definitely let us know. But basically doubling the federal minimum wage in a place like Washington State, that very well might not have much of an impact in a state like, I don't know, he mentioned Alabama. That would have an effect.
And I have family that lives in Alabama, and you know, the cost of living is much cheaper. I mean, sometimes my aunt brags to me. I sent her the link. I hope she's watching. We can bring her on. You know, sometimes she brags to me like, you know, gas is $1.25. So, I mean, the thing is, though, it should measure up. But I think overall, people should have a livable wage, and whatever that is. Should be that $15 an hour. I mean, when you think about that, if you work 40 hours a week, you know, 4 weeks in a year, that's like less than $30,000 a year. It's not a lot of money. That's not even a lot of money if you think about it. Living in Virginia, you living in Alabama. I mean, less than 30 grand. I mean, you can't even buy a new car.
Well, I'm gonna go out on a limb, and I'm sure the people will let me know. And so I'm not saying this is fact; it's a guess. But I don't think there's anybody that works in the Boeing company here in the state of Washington that makes $15 an hour. However, I have family down in South Carolina because that's where the Dreamliner is put together, and Boeing is actually leaving Seattle, the Seattle area, Everett, to go down there to South Carolina for assembly. And there's people in the Boeing company down in South Carolina that are making that kind of rate, which is like, I don't know. But they're like, man, we got a good job. We work at Boeing. We making $15, $17 an hour. They're all like, man, we got a great job. I was like, you work at Boeing? You making 15 an hour? Whoa.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, I think all American people would like to earn more money, right? I mean, my dad used to say there is no such thing as extra money. So if I'm going to get some more money for the hard work, I mean, people are still putting in sweat equity regardless of how much they're getting paid. So if I work for Boeing in Washington and Boeing in Alabama, that wage should almost be equivalent across the board, right? Because you're doing the same amount of work, regardless of how much it costs. I see somebody in the comments saying, and I think they have a good point. Would changing your rate of pay, cause you to want to move somewhere else? And I think the opposite happens, right? Like I know people are like, man, I could never move to DC, or I got to get out of Seattle because it's just too expensive. And so we're finding that a lot of Americans are moving to cheaper places, including my parents. Like my parents moved to Las Vegas because they needed a place that they could retire and live off their retirement income. So we got to do more. If we're going to ask businesses to, increase that minimum wage, I think we got to do something to support them in order to meet that need.
I agree with all of that, but I do think that there are ways that we can set standards, and we can actually go state by state and look into it and see each state what their situation is, what their cost of living is, what it should be. I think my problem with this whole thing is that I don't trust Trump to regulate that, because Trump's whole agenda is around deregulation of everything that he can deregulate. I don't think that he's going to actually do the work to make sure that these states are paying people living wages. And one thing too about here in Seattle, where our minimum wage is $15, that's not true of the surrounding areas. So like if you work for a company like UPS, for example, if your building is in Kent and you work for UPS, your pay rate is different than the folks who work for the UPS in Seattle. And you can do the same exact job and you will have a different pay rate for sure.
Right. So moving on, when we talk about money and loot here, one of the things we talked about was this bill, the stimulus, and the stimulus has been wild. I think, remember the last time we came on here together is when Trump was like, man, we gonna talk about this after the election. You know what I'm saying? He shut it down. He was like, yeah, man, I'm gonna talk about this after the election, nothing's moving. Clearly some things switched up since then. And now, this thing is back and forth. The moderator asked President Trump, like, man, what's up? This is your people that are holding this up. And Trump said it's Pelosi. And then Trump pushed it over to Biden and was like, or either the moderator did, you're the head of the Democrat Party. So what are you doing? And Biden was like, well, we passed our part months ago. What did you guys take away from this part about this stimulus and PPP and getting funds that I think almost everybody agrees is needed in one way or another, but getting it out to the public? What was your takeaway from that section? I will start with you, Julia.
Well, I think our elected officials need to get it in order, right? It's been, like I said, it's been about almost 7 months that the American people have gotten their first stimulus check. People need some more support, especially as we're moving into the fall. There's millions of Americans that are out of work. We're talking about $1,200 or maybe even a little bit more. It's not much. And, I really think that everyone needs to come to an agreement. There needs to be a lot of time invested in this, and they've had 6 months. So whatever they need to do to get on the same page, Democrats and Republicans, it needs to happen, and it needs to happen very quickly.
Mike?
I agree. And I found it extremely interesting how when we talked about the virus from like the health perspective, how fast Trump was to deflect and say, well, this virus is affecting every country. It's affecting Europe. It's affecting here. It's affecting there. But one thing that he's not speaking to is the way that the European countries and even in Canada, like they took care of their citizens. We got one $1,200 check one time months ago, and then we got a bunch of political back and forth in the whole blame game. Whereas in a lot of these other countries, you know, their people were not working and their government stepped up and made sure that they had the necessary resources to survive. One thing that jumped out to me really early in the virus too was that in China, when they locked down Wuhan and had everyone living in their houses, police officers were delivering groceries to people's front door. And that blew my mind as a Black American, because I don't even know how much I would trust a cop bringing me groceries. But when I look at that and I look at that infrastructure and what they were able to do for their people versus what Trump has done for us, like, stop deflecting and get this done.
Right, but don't we have to keep apples to apples? You know, I used to work in China over in Beijing, and yeah, the police might bring you groceries, but they also might make you disappear. But it's a different type of government over there, where and government says something.
Before,
yeah, but
go ahead.
No, what I was saying is I agree that a lot of other countries had a lot of other innovations and went a lot of other different approaches, but don't you have to compare things apples to apples? You know, like, I mean, in China, you know, I mean, there is no protest. The stuff that we see right here and everything else, like I said, I used to work out there in Beijing, and it's a different kind of environment. So we can highlight some of the successes that China has, but isn't it fair if we're going to compare the U.S., we need to compare the different kind of system? I mean, like Canada, they're taking care of their citizens and everything else, but Canada has a different type of government structure than the United States.
I agree with that, but don't talk about America as the greatest country on earth, and don't try to make it seem like you have this thing under control, because there are a lot of other countries that did have it under control. And maybe it is comparing apples to oranges, but I'd rather turn these apples in and give me some oranges, because the system that we have right now clearly isn't working for everybody. And when we have a system where the billionaires are raking in, the rich are literally getting richer. The top 1% are profiting off of this virus while everyone else suffers. So I don't think that it's fair to just say apples to oranges and let anyone off the hook. I think that there are things that could be done for us, but instead of those things happening for the people like me, those things are happening for the people like Bezos.
Your thoughts?
Can I bring it back to the stimulus real quick? Can I let you guys know what I spent my $1,200 on? My grandmother's funeral that died from COVID. So when we talk about this when we talk about this stimulus check, it ain't nothing. And people spent it on groceries, on one mortgage payment, on, childcare, because they had to still go to work because they were essential employees. $1,200 lasted 2 weeks. Okay. Like, move on, give people a little bit more money, figure out ways to get them bailouts, make sure that they have their unemployment coming in, get more people to fuel the unemployment departments in all of these states so that people can have, their unemployment insurance claims speed up and go faster. Like, it's almost ridiculous what we're talking about. I'm not sitting here super anxious on the edge of my seat, like, oh, I'm going to get another $1,200. No, I spent that on a funeral. That's gone. These people are dying. They're dead. You're not going to get that back. So we're talking about real lives, real people, real things that are happening. It's not that people are getting excited to go shopping over this. Get on the same page. Our elected officials need to get on the same page right now. Help people to have a little bit of cushion as we move into the winter.
So you're saying, like, man, Republican, Democrat, Biden, Trump, man, you got to get it together.
Period.
All right. So something else that they brought up over here was Obamacare, was healthcare. You just talked about, unfortunately, having to bury your grandmother. You talk about Obamacare, and I mean healthcare as a whole. And what Trump was basically saying is, kind of what they've been saying is Obamacare is crap. And then what you hear Biden saying is like, well, you guys have been saying for 10 years now since we passed it that you had a plan, and they've yet to see a plan. And so what was the takeaway? We'll start with you, Mike. What was your takeaway in the conversation around healthcare, Obamacare, and then Biden saying that he's going to do the remix and roll out Biden care?
I thought the Biden care piece was interesting. I love how Biden rides Obama's coattails when it benefits him. And then when he thinks he doesn't, he tries to step out and act like he's better than Obama somehow. But I think the more important thing is how Trump keeps trying to say the socialized health. He wants to activate people. He wants to try to keep throwing the word socialism out there. He wants to make it seem like Biden is going to eliminate the option for private insurance. He wants to make it seem like the pre-existing stuff will roll over with his new plan. And the fact of the matter is, none of that stuff is true. At the end of the day, Biden wants to have a public option. It's an option, and we should have that option because healthcare should be a right. There's no reason why in a country like ours, we can't have everyone have quality healthcare. It's possible. The only thing about it is it's a choice, and it depends on how our elected officials feel and what they do. And I have been very critical of Obama's administration in the past, but I do think that it's fair to say as soon as Obama got into office, Republicans took the House and they made every single thing that he did difficult. So when Trump keeps coming at Biden so hard, saying, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? That was one point that I was glad that Biden finally made. It was because the Republicans fought that administration tooth and nail for every single thing that they tried to do.
Right. And Julia, any follow-up thoughts?
Let us not forget that when Barack Obama was president, that he had a Republican Congress. So Donald Trump keep asking, well, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do this? Well, he couldn't get nothing done. He couldn't.
Well, actually, I think the first 2 years, I don't know, it seems like a lifetime ago. The first 2 years he had I think he had everything. But then after that, the midterm election.
At the tail end of his administration, the first 4 years, blocked. It was like a traffic.
I don't think it was even the first 2 years. I think the midterm election, people turned out. Well, I'm sure we got some historians here in the comments
about getting bills and legislation passed. That's what I'm talking about. And so when we're talking about healthcare, healthcare is not a choice; it's a right. Right? Like everyone should have healthcare. That should be a fundamental right. I see a few people in the comments talking about, they're having issues with obtaining healthcare. Healthcare for one person as a private pay, if you have like a job, is about $2,500 a year per person, which does not include deductibles, which is like $25 to $100 in copays, right? And that's like Kaiser, that's like United Healthcare, and that's expensive. I mean, who has $2,500 per family member to get them to the doctor, and then $50 every single time you take them to the doctor? That's a lot of money. And so, I really feel like we do need to come up with affordable healthcare for all people. Joe Biden talked about reducing the drug prices. He talked about supporting private insurances, which I'm glad he finally spoke on that, because in the last debate, he really didn't defend himself and take a position on private insurances. And, he talked about, overall people's fundamental right that they deserve affordable healthcare. Donald Trump talked about, and he talked about snatching Obamacare and saying, we'll come up with a new plan. But where's your plan? And, that's just like quitting a job before you get a new one. So we should continue to have the one we have in place, even if you feel like you can't make it better. But until you have a full plan, a new plan that you want to roll over and put in, we shouldn't just cut ourselves off at the knee.
No, I think this is another area where Biden laid out what his plan was and what he wanted to do. And then he turned the question back to Trump, gave him the opportunity to explain what his plan was. And instead of explaining his plan, he decided to just flail and attack. And, so it's not really clear what Trump's plan is. And he didn't take that opportunity to explain it. He dropped the ball there.
Right. And so, yeah, it was 2010. So Obama, they had everything 2008 to 2010, and it was the midterm elections. And then, yeah, it was the last 6 years, nothing really moved. So, I mean, the thing is that I think what is a good point is that there's never really been an alternative that's been laid out. I think it's fair. People have criticisms of Obamacare, and even people who are on Obamacare and like Obamacare are like, yeah, this thing could probably be way better. But there hasn't been an alternative really that's been rolled out. I think the other thing though is like Obamacare is in court right now. The whole it's in court right now, and it might get dropped altogether, and people who are facing health difficulties, this could really be a crucial time for them coming up here.
That Joe Biden said there too was everybody that's getting COVID right now that might get rolled in with those pre-existing, they need care and they need protection, and if you get rid of that, you know how many Americans are going to be affected? Like, that's a scary thought to have.
Why would you ever snatch healthcare during a public health emergency? That is the stupidest thing ever. Like, even if you don't agree with everything, why snatch it now? That's dumb. That's stupid.
It's reckless.
It's reckless, huh? All right, and so let me see right here. Do we actually have it? We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll get a few other topics here. They talked about Ukraine. They talked about South Korea. But one of the big things, especially for us here, is the discussion around race and the talk. And let's talk about how both candidates answered that question. We'll take a short break. We'll be right back.
We're right here at East Precinct. It doesn't get any closer than this right now.
Converge Media produces culturally relevant content for Black and urban audiences. Our coverage is raw, transparent, and objective, praised by community leaders, government officials, and residents. As a small independent media company, we rely on the financial support of individuals and business members to stay on the front lines of the news that's important to you.
All right, welcome back. I'm joined with Mike Davis of the South Seattle Emerald, Julia Jessie, Converge Media, two of the most opinionated people that I know about politics. And you see, this is good. I like these shows because I just get to sit back and be chill. Because I know you guys do your thing. You run with it. But before we move on, and like I said, big topic, of course, we want to talk about here is one of race, and also something else that they didn't really talk about. At least I didn't hear. So I didn't really hear talk this week about people in the streets and riots and anarchists and this and that and everything. We didn't hear that, but it talked about election security. And I was up late night watching TV and as usual, and you see the FBI director there, and you see the national intelligence, and they have a press conference, and they said, "Man, the Russians and the Iranians, guess what? They have your voter information, and they are meddling in the election. Maybe never stop meddling in it." Everybody had both kind of had a different approach on this or a different answer on it. But I'll start with you, Mike. What were your thoughts when they talked about election security and especially these active threats that the FBI director has told us is going on?
My thoughts are that Trump never fully addresses this. He always just deflects it. I thought this was a particularly interesting case because he said that his people told him that all of those people interfering want Biden to win. So, like, that was his new approach. I think that Biden tried to step up and take a strong stance, and he tried to say that people will pay. But at the end of the day, to be honest, I don't trust either of them on this issue. I think that both sides have spied on both sides. I think that Trump is way too friendly with Putin, and that is a problem. I think that all of the stuff with China and the bank accounts and the debt is also a problem. But I just can't trust either side on this issue, if I'm being completely honest.
first of all, okay, foreign interference in elections. I mean, we're living in a time where everything is done virtually. So we have some of the most greatest hackers in the whole world. I'm not surprised by this. I'm disturbed by this. I'm excited that we have an FBI director who took a full stance. Joe Biden stood out there and completely condemned and said, we are going to take action on anybody who meddles in our elections. I feel like Donald Trump missed his opportunity to do the same thing. There's corruption in politics, right? But to me, it's not the biggest priority right now, right? And I know that, Donald Trump took this, instead of answering this, he took the opportunity to talk about Hunter Biden and the $3.5 million and blah, 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 blah. And I was kind of texting a couple of people and I'm like, does this matter to you right now that Joe Biden's son may or may not have accepted $3.5 million? And someone said, I would have did the same thing. And so I laughed. I just don't know how we can equate the Russians or Iranians interfering with our election, Donald Trump's relationship with Putin. Joe Biden has been an elected official for 47 years. He's worked in government for 47 years, and the only dirt and corruption you can drag up on him is his son accepting $3.5 million. That's it. I think we might be good with that.
Hey, I agree with that. I agree. I think I out though when Trump said Joe Biden's son got the job without having any energy experience. This is a guy who's sitting there, the president of the United States, with no political experience. Like, how do you even fix your mouth to say something like that with a straight face? Yet here we are.
This is the second president who won't release his tax returns.
Right. Well, okay. So we'll keep along this discussion here, but along the lines of election security, I think we've been let down by everybody. Because I really wasn't convinced. Obama was like, I talked to Putin and I told him knock it off. And I'm like, hey, come on, cuz, you know what I'm saying? You live in Chicago. That was the best you could do. You feel me? It seems to me, I don't think that anybody has taken election security seriously, because we have to remember that if the Russians hacked the last election, which everybody's saying they did, they hacked it on Obama and Biden's watch. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's what it is. And they didn't hack the day of the election. They had infiltrated, they had rolled out their plan during the last election. And the issue was supposed to be like, oh, okay, fool me once, shame on us, or shame on you. But it looks like it's happening again. And it's shame on us, because now it's the same people. And then everybody's like, oh, well, it worked for the Russians. Now everybody's jumping on board. The Iranians, the Chinese, everybody's like that.
It's open season right now in the United States. And I'm not saying that's a good thing. I'm just stating the fact. I think it's difficult in this time to really, can the FBI director really come out with a strategy to say what they are or not going to do? So I don't know if they've necessarily dropped the ball, because they may have a plan in place. I do know that social media, Facebook has really taken a stance on, who can advertise like a lot of false information and things like that.
After they've already came up billions and billions of dollars and it's easy for people to take a stance after they've already they've got their bag. You know what I'm saying? After they got all their loot, they're like, yeah, let's take a stance against this or that.
I know. And I'm not writing that wrong, but I'm just saying, at least we're seeing some change.
As long as both sides are doing it, it's going to continue to happen. There's no side has an incentive to really take any strong stance or to really make a move on this issue, because both sides see how it can benefit them. And if it's a foreign government that's actually doing the hacking and the manipulating, then there's always somebody to point the finger to and to blame. And then we can wrap ourselves in the flag and say, yeah, this is America, and they did that over there, and things just continue.
Right. Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Julia.
I was just gonna say, just to end it, like it really snatches the integrity of our democracy, and it's a sad thing to see. I know that we're getting people to go out and vote. Your vote counts, and things like this with people meddling in our elections and foreign interference is really disheartening, and it really takes away from our system.
Right. Well, I mean, I would just say this, and then we'll move on to the issue of race. But it's one thing when people have a propaganda campaign, and I think what we saw last election was that the Russians was running a propaganda campaign, and I'm sure we've run propaganda campaigns all over in all kinds of countries around the world. But it's almost like, how gullible are the people going to be? And social media, a lot of these social media guys, they were willing accomplices to foreign propaganda. And that's one thing, but I think it's something different when we say that people are hacking into our voter registration. People might, have the ability to delete voters from the rolls. People might have the ability to hack in and change numbers and stuff like that. So I think you see an escalation from what was a propaganda campaign, well played out by the Russians through social media, and really exposed the gullibility of the American voter and everything else, because they relied on everything that they saw, a lot of people on social media, to people actually attacking our voting infrastructure that could potentially change the outcome of an election, especially local elections. National elections, it might be a bit difficult in a sense because the total numbers, but some of these local elections in individual states, and for representatives and things like that, I mean, it could be a very serious issue, don't you think?
I do. And I think it's interesting too on the topic that you got Trump and the whole Republican Party who have already positioned themselves to not accept the results of this election, and they're talking about fraud. But it's already been proven that the safest way to vote is the mail-in ballot. Is to actually fill it in and then go physically put it in the box, which is the thing that they're opposing the most. So everything stinks, man. I don't trust it.
Well, I gotta put us. He said everything stinks. Julia, hopefully you can say something better than stinks.
In my mind, I was saying that too. So I think we have the same way today, Mike. I think it just stinks, and it sucks that people are going and casting a vote, and when the polls finally come out and the results are given, you don't feel confident that it's a true representation of what the American people think, feel, and have voted for. So we got to do something. I mean, the U.S. intelligence agencies are there, and they have all of this, high-tech equipment to try to see what's going on, to block. I see so many people in the comments talking about the United States has been meddling in elections all over in different countries from years and years to come. I just hope that we can put some more integrity back into our system.
And let me bring this one up here on the screen. This one's for you, Mike. This is from Leon Bernstein. Everything stinks. All right. Okay. Hold on. Here we go.
Bad.
Stinks bad, Leon. Bad, man. Wow. Okay. Well, it looks like we're getting everybody in agreement over here on these comments. So let's move on to a big topic that's impacting America right now. It's always impacted America, to be honest with you. But again, it's on the national spotlight, and that's talking about racial equality and justice. And the moderator tonight talked about the talk. And it's crazy because all three of us have a different life experience in different journeys. We've all met each other later in life. You know what I'm saying? Mike, I really just met you probably like 6 months ago. Julia, I met by 8-10 years ago. But all of us know what the talk is. It's like we all know. And it's so crazy because that's the same talk that my mama gave me decades ago. It's the same thing. You know what I'm saying? And people would be funny because on the live stream, it'd be over there, be some police officers over there, whatever. And I'd be like, yes, sir. No, sir. And it was just automatic from a little kid. You know what I'm saying? And some of my colleagues, they were just talking contemporary terms. All right, man, whatever. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, yes, sir. No, sir. It's those little things. You get pulled over and I find myself, you narrate to the officer. Officer, I would like to take my hands off the wheel and be able to go into the glove compartment to grab my wallet. It's in the wallet. You know what I'm saying? You don't do nothing when you get pulled over without approval first from the officer. Officer, my wallet's in the glove compartment. I'd like to reach over and grab out the glove compartment. And it's crazy because my mama gave me that talk, and that's the same talk that I've had with my son. You know what I'm saying? Always be respectful, son. You know what I'm saying? Don't sit here and get antagonized in a situation and yada yada and all these kind of things. So we know it's crazy. It's like unfortunately it's in our DNA. That being black here, you really had to talk. Your parents had to talk with you. Your thoughts, Mike? Or go ahead, Julia.
Go ahead. I was going to say, I'll give it to Mike first. He's a black man. Let the black man speak first. Go ahead.
No, you're absolutely right, Omari. When I first started driving, I actually kept the license and the insurance in the visor, so that I didn't have to reach down and reach around. Like, it's up. So my hands are here. And when I'm going for my license, I'm going up, not down. I would also say that I remember one time I was in like one of these equity trainings, and there was like a white guy, and he talked about his experience with police, and his first experience with the police officer was in elementary school. And a cop came to his class and he talked, and they had snacks and they gave out stickers. And I'm just like, God damn, the cops never came to my school as a kid like that. So it's just everything in our lives that lead up to that talk, it's already reinforced, man. Like, even before the talk has to hit, like driving your car, even as a little kid, just living life, man. Like, that's our experience. And I don't really think that Trump can grasp that. I think that Joe Biden spoke to it fairly well, but I don't know how much of that is him being a good politician or him actually having real experiences and actually change. And one thing that I've always also found like interesting about Trump is that, you know, the Civil Rights Act passed, Trump was like 19 years old. So he spent the whole early part of his life into early adulthood looking at people of color in a very specific lens. And it just feels like he's never really been able to flip that switch.
Right. Let me throw this in here real quick, Julia. I wanted to address this. This is from CC7174675. Why do you guys assume in all caps that only in all caps blacks have the talk? Try talking to people outside your bubble. Well, first of all, I would say, CC, that no one in this conversation said that other ethnicities don't have this talk. We're speaking to our life experience. And what I said is, in our life experience of these three people here on the screen, we're talking about our journey. Now, I know people from other ethnic groups and everything else that have the talk. So let's be careful using the word assume. No one here assumed that only blacks have the talk, because, you know, most people, especially in Seattle, it's a very multicultural group here. And also, I got a lot of white friends. You know what I'm saying? I'm not being like I got my one white friend. I got a lot of white friends. And you know what? A lot of poor, especially poor white people and people in different areas and neighborhoods, they also have this talk. So I'm not assuming anything about any other group. I'm only talking about our experience right here on this particular panel. But I do thank you for that comment, because I got an opportunity to bring that up. Julia, your thoughts on the talk?
So I also want to make another point of clarity. The talk that white folks give to their kids is not the same talk that we're talking about, because it extends past law enforcement. The talk that we're talking about is, don't show up and be too black. Don't wear a hoodie. Don't wear a do-rag while you're driving. Make sure when you show up that you speak properly. Make sure that your hair is not too loud. Make sure that your body language is not too loud. So the talk is not just about your interaction with police, but the talk is about how you show up into the room, how you show up and have these different conversations that are people that don't look like you, how you interact on a daily basis. That's what the talk is about. The talk does not just talk about when you get pulled over, which is a big thing. And the talk doesn't just extend to kids. I have the talk with my husband when he gets in the car. Take your hat off. Don't drive with your hat off. Don't drive with your hat on. Don't have rims because you don't want your car to look too black. That's what the talk is about. It's not just about getting pulled over by the police. And I'll be damned if somebody on here says to their white son, don't drive with your do-rag on, because that's what my mother had to tell my brother when he was 17 years old when he first got his license. So that talk is not the same.
Well, while we're on the talk real quick, you know what I'm saying? This is interesting. What non-police interaction talk have you had? I'll throw one out there. Is 23rd and Jackson and Red Apple. You know, my mama used to always say, don't go into the store with your hands in your pocket. Don't pick up anything unless you're gonna buy it. Don't go down there with you know, if you're after school with your backpack, see if you can leave it somewhere. Those don't, as Julia said, those don't have anything to do with policing, but those are some of the things. I mean, that was a big thing. Do not be in any store with your hands in your pocket. Don't pick up nothing if it ain't on that shopping list.
Yeah.
I mean, when I went to an HBCU, and my college professor would tell us, don't have your hair too loud. I mean, I used to be nervous about going into a job interview with braids. I used to be nervous about wearing my hair natural, out and curly. And so I'm not condemning white folk whatsoever, but I'm saying that systemically in the Black community, we have been taught, and this is not to say it's a good or bad thing, but we have been culturally trained to dumb it down so that white folk feel a little bit more comfortable.
Right, and I'll throw it over here to you, Mike. And also, I want to be clear. This is the one good thing here about Converge, is this is really a platform for learning and understanding. And so this isn't a platform for me or any of our guests to be like, you belong to this race, so you're bad, or you belong to this race because political ideology because you're bad. This is a place though where we're able to discuss our shared experience and our observations on things that are out there. So anybody that's coming in, we welcome you on the platform, but just know, man, you know, we come from a position of peace and discussion over here. Go ahead, Mike.
No, I just wanted to say that, you know, it's valid, man, because it's universal. Like what I'm hearing you say about going into the store, that's me. What I hear Julia say about her brother not driving with the do-rag on, that's also me. So like these are things that happen for all of us. And you can expand this panel to more Black folks, and I'm pretty comfortable that they would all have those similar experiences, because this is just the life that we have to live. Conforming, like the way that I talk at work is not the way that I'm going to talk at home. And I don't just mean that to say that like not using profanity. I mean the actual tone and the pattern, like the way it's different, man. The way I walk, I'm like a hell of a lot straighter in my posture. Like these are all things that you pick up on and you learn so that you can conform to these white spaces. I'm already a Black man with dreads and tattoos, and I always have to do those extra things to make sure that other folks feel comfortable. And this is just something that I have to live with every day.
All right.
I'm interested to hear, because I listen, even in this moment, I'm like, ooh, I was a little bit too Black right there. You know what I'm saying? And I shouldn't have to check myself. I shouldn't have to check my Blackness. I'm not going to do that. I know you're like, she hella light skin, whatever. We ain't going to go there. We ain't going to go there this time. But I don't want to have to check my opinion, my attitude, my position on things, because it makes someone feel uncomfortable that I'm showing up as who I am with all of my experience and all my baggage. But I appreciate, you know, people from other races and different cultures. I you know, you already gave people the floor to come on. I would love to hear some of the people, even, you know, Cece, I know that you spoke out on, you know, having conversations about the different bubble. I'd love to hear other perspectives and other opinions. What is that talk to people who are not Black? What does that talk sound like to your kids, or to your wife or your husband, or, you know, your nieces and nephews? What is that talk if it's not about law enforcement and it's not about race? What's the talk?
All right, so I just put the link out there. So anybody, the link is out there. So it would be good to hear from someone non-Black.
Oh, so they were a little too white trash. Okay, I could see that being a conversation.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. It's just like, man, the floor is yours. So go ahead if you feel you want to come and join the discussion. Like I said, you can tell they done left me in here by myself tonight, because if Nikki Barrett and there was there, they'd be like, "What are you doing? Oh my God, you can't put a link in there."
Who said, "Don't check yourself and don't dumb it down." Okay, I'm not going. I'm not.
No, I mean you shouldn't. You should very much be yourself. I mean, if we can't have a space, this is another thing about Converge. If we can't have a space that we can just be ourselves, everybody, no matter their ideology, all the way left, right, and indifferent, they all have some kind of space where they're comfortable in their space, and this is very much our space right here. So I mean, be comfortable, and as long as you ain't cursing on here and talking crazy.
A good one from a viewer, Kimberly Barber Woodruff. I have a daughter. My talks are about men and mostly pertaining to average white guys. But that's also a gender thing, right? Like women give girls the talk, right? Your mama, your auntie, and everybody gonna put you in that kitchen and say, listen, y'all, when you're dealing with a man or when you go on a date, they talk about how you dress, how you carry yourself, how you act, how you interact with men. I just had an experience with my goddaughter, getting into kind of a serious situation with a guy and feeling like that guy did a little bit too much to her. And I brought it to a group chat of women that I'm in, and we all had the conversation with, man, that's like what happens to all of us at some point. So that's definitely a talk, Kimberly. So you're right. That's one of them. But I think that also extends to gender. So either way, but I definitely agree with that 100%.
All right. I see it. Dre Franklin said earlier, the comment's not up there right now. He's like, no one wants to get baked public. Man, we ain't trying to bake nobody. Just want to get a different
I think all of us love to get another opinion. And if you guys watch our show, me and Mike go back and forth and disagree all the time. So look, the floor is yours. We're here to learn just as well as to share our opinions. So y'all don't be scared.
Right. And so now back to the talk. It's the Biden talked about, I was in East Wilmington and it was 90% black. He talked about his daughter being a social worker and she maybe wrote a thesis or something, or was at the University of Pennsylvania and some everything else. And Biden came with the empathy approach. Like, you know what? I'm not black, but I feel your pain. And Trump came with the transactional approach. I'm not black, don't want to be black, but I got some people out of prison. I gave money to HBCUs. I partnered up with the one black senator, and we got the opportunity zones, and we got this and that, everything else. I pose a larger question, especially here in politics. Do black people need an empathetic leader, or do we need a transactional leader? Let's start with you, Mike.
That's a tough one, because I think that when you have leaders that are transactional in nature, it'll extend beyond this conversation. So, for example, like when we look at the Lift Every Voice plan, or you want to look at the Platinum plan, a lot of that is transactional. And a lot of that is okay, black people feel this way, so let's just give them some money and maybe they'll go away. I think I heard you say one time, about the difference of giving someone a fish versus giving someone a fishing pole. I think that while the empathy kind of misses me because I don't know when it is and when it isn't genuine, I do think that you do need at least a degree of that, because to really heal and to really get past like a lot of the past traumas, like we do need more than just dollars. We need to try to change perspective and change how we're viewed and really like have more acceptance within our society. And it's not an easy place to get to. I'm not a politician. I can't lay out how we get there, but I do think that we need a little bit of both. You're muted.
You're muted. We can't hear you.
Before I throw it over to you, Julia, let's not forget that we had Bubba. We had Bill Clinton from Hope, the city of Hope, Arkansas. He grew up with poor black people, and he understood it, this and that and everything. They used to call him the first black president and some everything else. And Bill Clinton felt Black America's pain, right? But again, I throw the question out there: Do black people, the Black Americans, need an empathetic president who would be like, man, he understands, he feels us, you know what I'm saying? Or do we need a transactional president who's like, man, I don't feel nothing, but if this is what you need, this is what we're going to do?
I don't think it's either or, honestly. I think we need an empathetic leader and a transactional leader in combination. We need somebody who's empathetic because there's a lot going on in our country, and we need that across the board for all people, all Americans, right? And we need that overall, right? And I don't want a president that's just about Black people or just about white people or just about Asian Americans. Like, I want a president who's speaking up for all people, for our LGBTQ community, for our individuals with disabilities. Like, I want a president who's going to speak to all of that and infuse capital and funding to that. But as a Black woman, and as because we're bringing it up, I do think we need someone that is transactional, because you can never understand my Black experience because you haven't lived it. So it's not that you can't be empathetic towards it. You can, but I'm gonna need you to show up for that. And I think we saw Joe Biden tonight talk about what he plans to do, right? And Mike and I, we debated about this, about the crime bill, and we might get into that a little bit later, but he really took the opportunity to talk about, all the mistakes that he's made and how he decides to, how he's going to make up for those policy misperfections back in the day, right? And so I think Joe Biden did a good job at talking about how really even bringing it up, right? I think he addressed it. I think he, unequivocally said that there is institutionalized racism, but it is odd watching two old white dudes talk about the Black experience. It's different. And, conservative or not conservative, I think we need some more action, period. All the way through.
I heard what Joe Biden said, and I did not think he did the best job. I think he did go for the empathy approach. Yes, I understand that. And feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but what I heard Joe Biden say was that there was a bill in the 80s that everyone signed. He didn't say me, I. He said there was a bill that everyone signed that criminalized drug use and that he would change that. I did not hear Joe Biden apologize for the crime bill. I did not hear Joe Biden talking about going the other way on the crime bill. I heard Joe Biden taking all of us approach, not a me approach. And I absolutely feel that Joe Biden and Senator Harris both owe the Black community a huge apology for their past in law enforcement. And I don't feel that we've got that from either one of those two.
Well, let me jump in here real quick, Joey, and then I'll go over to you. I mean, so with Trump was kind of calling Biden out. He was like, well, you guys was in office for 8 years. I mean, you said you wanted to do this. You said you wanted to do that. You said that you made the HBCUs come back every year. You know what I'm saying? I gave them a bag so they don't have to come back here every year. You said that you wanted actual reform with prisons. He called Joe Biden out. And when Joe Biden was talking about gridlock in Congress, he was like, man, Biden, you got to know how to talk to people. I talked to people, got the crime bill, this prison reform bill through, and some everything else. I mean, President Trump came with some tangible things, whether you feel it's enough or not enough, or even just a token, and was kind of challenging Biden, saying that you guys were in power, and before you were in power, you were there in the Senate for an awful long time. I'll throw it back to you, Julia.
I think this crime bill is going to be a very difficult thing, which is why I did not support Joe Biden as the Democratic nominee from the start, was because of the 1990s crime bill. I did have some conversations about it with, some of my relatives, some of my older relatives. I'm about to be 33. So when I think about the 90s, I was just about to get born, right? And so I couldn't really understand the magnitude of what that was. And so we're talking about a piece of legislation that was supposed to deal with combating drugs. And Joe Biden, he talked about over 100 senators supporting that piece of legislation. And, you brought up a good point, Omari, about, that you guys were in office for 8 years, and why didn't you do anything to right the wrong then? I'm in 100% agreement with that. There should have been something done way long ago, right? It's 2020. It's 2020. So we have to really do something to rectify those decisions. There are still people in jail serving sentences for marijuana. And there's just no way around that. I'm not going to defend him. I'm not going to back him up. He did say, we made a mistake and we're going to get some change done. I'm willing to put him in office to see that reverse.
Mike, I know you hold a heavy grudge when you talk about Biden and Harris. We got a lot of new viewers in joining us tonight, which is great, and a lot of different perspectives. Talk about that, because you say on one hand, let me bring myself back in. You say on one hand, it's like it's inspiring for your daughter because you see Kamala Harris, this black woman, this multicultural woman there for vice president, and it's inspiring for your young daughter. But there's always a but with you. Why don't you explain that but?
Well, my but with Senator Harris goes back to her time as a prosecutor. I encourage the new viewers to Google George Gage, look at his case, and look at a lot of the other cases where Kamala Harris was looking at wrongful convictions where she literally sent people back to jail over technicalities. And, she had a lot of opportunities to go back on that and to let people go. But instead, she prosecuted people to the full extent of the law, people that appear to be innocent. Some people, after she sent them back, continued to fight and were free because their convictions were wrong. I think you should go back and look at her stance on truancy, how it targeted poor people, specifically poor Black people. She sent a lot of Black people to jail, and there's so much information out there that you can go and read. So for her to try to step into this space now and try to be one of us again, and I think I just seen another video of her dancing in the rain, and it's like she's always dancing. She's always wearing just give us the politics.
I didn't support Kamala in the primaries either. I mean, this is the thing. And you guys know that, my husband is incarcerated. And so I have heard firsthand knowledge, met these men who have been locked up since they've been 18, 19, 20 years old for marijuana, still can't get home, right? And so there just has to be some change. I know that, Donald Trump has talked about, how many sentences he's commuted. Under the Obama administration, there were, close to 1,000 convictions commuted. It's still not enough. There does need to be some legislation that comes into play to remove mandatory minimums. Joe Biden talked about why they set mandatory minimums in place to begin with, because they were overcharging Black people and people of color for the same crime. I mean, we're still seeing that now, but mandatory minimums suck because it really doesn't give the judge and it's a give and a take. It doesn't give the judge an opportunity to really render the right verdict. But I don't know.
I think that the issue with mandatory minimums are that the crimes where there's mandatory minimums weren't level, in being that a lot of crimes that Black people were offending is where you found that a lot of these mandatory minimums, people talk about crack cocaine, you get a crack rock. It was a mandatory minimum, but powder cocaine, which is actually more cocaine than what's in a rock cocaine, then, you had options for deferment, you had options for treatment. You might have, a lesser charge of drug possession, and then you had crack cocaine. And so the thing is what the minimums, the mandatory minimums, the way that it was rolled out is it was unfair how it was applied. Right. You get what I'm saying? If crack cocaine had a mandatory minimum and powder cocaine had a mandatory minimum, then what do? You see what I'm saying?
Part of the crime bill.
And that wasn't how it was written. It was just written that crack cocaine had a mandatory minimum, but powder cocaine, which white people were using, didn't necessarily have a mandatory minimum, but crack cocaine did. And so the mandatory minimums, it was never applied fairly. And and we saw the end result of that was, prisons just packed.
I mean, I don't know. I think I've said all I could say on this topic. It's very difficult. There has to be criminal justice reform, and I don't care who is the president. We need to continue to take action on reforming our criminal justice system, reforming our prison systems and making it fair for these people and their families. Point blank, period. Whether it's Donald Trump or Joe Biden.
My question to you would be, who do you trust more to do that? Do you really trust the Biden parents' ticket? I mean, I don't. I honestly don't. Joe Biden has
trust Donald Trump. You trust the Trump administration to do more for criminal justice reform than Joe Biden because of the 1994 crime bill?
not just the 1994 crime bill, just all of Joe Biden's stances. His stances don't match the people on the ground. He's not going to defund police. He's going to give police more funding. He's not going to make any changes to law. We're not going to get qualified immunity. We're not going to get these are things that Senator Harris and Joe Biden supported their whole political careers. So now, because we hate Donald Trump, we're supposed to ignore everything that they've done up until this point. I just don't agree. And furthermore, in this debate today on the race questions, I would argue that Donald Trump actually came out on top. Joe Biden went.
And on that section?
That's how I feel. But Trump actually hit him with facts and things that he's actually done, and then questioned Joe Biden's record. Not only his 8 years, where Obama had 8 years to get that many people off, 8 years to do those many things, and Trump is saying, "This is what I did in 3 3/4." So, I do feel that Trump came out on top there.
He did come off on top in a presidential debate on that one section because Joe Biden is scared to talk about the crime bill. That's just it. He always dances around with that. But we're still talking about the same man who took out $85,000 in ads to call for the imprisonment of the Central Park Five. So you trust him?
That's five. That's 5 black men that went to jail. How many black men?
Who still has not apologized? Who still thinks that Mike, he still thinks that they're guilty for their crimes and they've been exonerated by DNA.
I don't care about his feelings. I care about his politics. I care about his politics.
No, you should care about the science. He doesn't care about science.
He doesn't care about science, but still, how many? So we're going to hold those 5 people against Trump, but we're going to let Joe Biden off on the thousands and thousands of people that are still in prison because of his crime bill?
If we're going to hold Joe Biden, then we got to hold all 100 plus senators that also voted on the crime bill.
Well, not all.
Them, or if they're not running for president, we can't hold them accountable.
Well, I'm just looking at the 2 presidential candidates in front of me right now. Joe Biden is the one that's in front of me. He won't even talk about the crime bill.
Listen,
like, okay, if we can't get repealed, can we at least get an acknowledgement? Can we get an apology? He got asked about it today. He started talking about the 80s.
Listen, in a debate situation, it doesn't work like that. I have my legislative director on here. I wish he would come on here and say, that's not the way laws are made. When you write a piece of legislation, people constantly come back years and years and years and input amendments because they don't work. And so you may write up a bill in 2020 and you're going to, in June 2020, 21, you're going to write an amendment because that piece doesn't work. You're going to remove language. You're going to add this. You're going to add that. So that's not the way legislation works. I mean, yes, the 1994 crime bill sucked. It was not good. And they have to they're doing stuff to pull it back, and they made mistakes. They made hella mistakes on that. I'm not arguing that.
You keep saying, hey,
if we're gonna hold Joe Biden to the stake for that, then we should be able to hold our other elected official, who is the same one who had thousands of dollars in ads, to hold the Central Park Five.
Yeah, but
listen, I'm not holding citizens to the same moral standard that I'm holding my elected officials to. Donald Trump was just
not a citizen anymore
at that point.
He's not a citizen.
Right. So this is.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you. I'd like to enter back into the conversation. Thank you for letting me back in over here. Let me say. Well, I mean, the thing is this, and if nothing else, this back and forth between you guys, we always say that, that this Black community is not a monolith and we don't all think the same way. And if nothing else here, man, you're exhibiting this because, I mean, there's a lot of people, we have to be honest that there's Black people, they talked about last election, a lot of white people held their nose and voted for Trump. You know what I'm saying? They were like, well, I don't really like him. I saw him in the video. He said this and that. He's rude or whatever, but they held their nose and voted for Trump. I think there's a lot of Black people this year, they're holding their nose and they're voting for Biden. You know, I mean, you hear Charlamagne the God say he's voting for Kamala Harris. He's not even recognizing Biden at all. He's like, yeah, people are like, I'm a hold my nose. And I think part of that is that time and again, Black people, I mean, these guys, they never deliver. I mean, I hate to sound that way because, I'm Mr. Go Vote, civic engagement, and everything else. But we have to be realistic. And I think it's disingenuous when people just want to drink the Kool-Aid and be like, oh, because it's Democrats, you know what I'm saying? It's all good. Or even because it's Republican or whatever. And when we have to realize that neither of these parties or systems are perfect, and they won't be because they're ran by humans. But what I'm kind of against is when people just hopping on the bandwagon, like just because. And I think what's important about these discussions is both of you guys are talking about issues. And a lot of times in our community, we just check the box because that's what we're supposed to do, as opposed to really being like, what are the issues that are important? Because even Julius pointed out some issues that Trump has been strong for. You know what I'm saying? What you talked about. You said even our last show, he's like, man, he's taking the lead on prison reform. Now, is it as strong maybe as you want to see or where to go or anything else? But that's an issue that's important to you. And we talking, Mike, you're, as an entrepreneur and everything else, you talk about small business. It's an issue that's important to you. And I think it's just important that we realize that these parties are supposed to be built up around issues and ideas, right?
Most definitely. That's such a good point. And I think, I watched some commentary on a lot of conservatives who are regretting their vote for Donald Trump because they're talking about how the Republican Party has just changed so much. And I feel bad about that, right? I feel like, instead of having, a true Republican Party, and I think about leaders like John McCain, who is such a great representation of a Republican and having a conservative attitude, but really still being able to have respect on both sides, right? And really speak bipartisan to a lot of issues. And right now we have this Trumpster. We have this kind of like this attitude of like, I don't even think the Republican Party got to see a real platform laid out since Donald Trump has been in office. And so, I think you're right. We have to be bipartisan on a lot of things. It's not okay to just vote for someone because they're a Democrat or vote for somebody because they're a Republican or anywhere in between. You need to vote for people because of the issue, and you need to figure out what issue stands out most and make that decision. And you have to vote, because if you do not vote, it's a vote in the opposite direction. So don't say, I'm not going to vote because I'm not going to vote this election, or, because I don't like either party. No. That's not what you do. It's a losing attitude.
Right. And on that, as we're getting ready to wind down here, Mike, when we talk about the importance of voting, we're talking about the presidential election here, Biden versus Trump. But even locally here in Seattle, in the Seattle area and in King County, I mean, there's people making important decisions. Here in our comments right here, I'm sure we have some people who like the sheriff exactly the way that the sheriff's office is in King County, especially people who don't live directly in Seattle. And so right now there's a ballot initiative where they're talking about making the sheriff an appointed position. And so when you leave Seattle Metro, a lot of people who are in the rest of King County are like, hey, we like the sheriff being elected. And when you come into the Seattle area, closer to the city, people are saying, hey, we want the sheriff to be appointed more for accountability. Wherever people lie on that issue, that's an important issue for people to get out and vote for, right?
Oh,
well, it might handle that.
Yeah, no, that's what I was saying. I was talking to Mike.
Yes. No, I think that all the local issues are really what should be focused on. And that really, yes, that is a big one. And there are others, but I would say that local politics is the place where you're going to see most of the changes to your day-to-day life. Like if you really want to see changes of like what's going to happen for you tomorrow, then that's local politics. I think the national politics are a lot larger. Now, what I will say about us being in Seattle right now, if Trump wins, we're going to see cuts to federal funding to our city. He's already said that.
So you feel so this is one thing, because I think that that the city of Seattle and Portland and New York, they're taking the Trump administration to court over the threat of the Trump administration pulling federal funds, and in Seattle, I think you wrote an article about that. That would be the $300 million or something like that into the city of Seattle. Do you think that if Trump gets elected, that he'll follow through on that threat to remove federal funding from the city of Seattle, Portland, and New York?
I think he'll try as hard as he can. I think he's already trying. I think that's why it's already going to court. And I think we'll see where it goes. But I absolutely believe that that's his plan. And even when you hear Trump talk today, look at the way that he talks about Democrat-run cities and Democrat-run states. Like, he doesn't like them, and he speaks about them with disdain. And I think that that's what really allowed Joe Biden to slide into a really smooth and easy victory today. Joe Biden took the bipartisan approach. Joe Biden took every opportunity that he could to remind us that I'm not the president of red states and blue states. I'm the president of America, because we need support in America. And even with Joe Biden taking that stance, Trump still couldn't bring himself to acknowledge the blue states. So yes, I do. In short, we will get that funding. That is his goal.
Mm-hmm. All right. So I'll throw it out. Last words before we shut it down over here. This is a good opportunity. This was the last debate. Any takeaways? Any last takeaways from this debate? And any calls to action? Again, we're staying on message, telling people to vote. But any takeaways from the final takeaways from the debate? Any calls to action for our viewers tonight?
I look, we had so many great viewers and so many great comments. I want to thank everybody for tuning in and giving us really great feedback. I mean, this only works if we can, read these comments and see what you guys are talking about. I work for an elected official, so I understand the importance of getting out locally and voting. Vote for your attorney generals. Vote for your council members. Vote for your mayors. Vote for any local officials, your sheriff's office, whatever it is. Those people are going to change and create legislation around things that go on in your city. So those are most important. Get out and vote for the presidential candidate. At the end of the day, those people are going to be in charge of how our democracy works. And so that's also just as important. And so your vote counts. I don't want anybody to be nervous or hesitant about casting their vote because of this foreign interference situation that's going on. Get out there, do your part. So many people have died and put their lives on the line in order for us to get this right. Do your due diligence. If you don't feel like standing in long lines, vote absentee. Our ballots here in Washington, D.C. have been given in advance. We already have those. I highly recommend that if you are voting absentee, go down and put them in a mailbox specifically for absentee ballots. You also can get out an early vote. Please don't wait until the last minute. Don't wait until the day that you need to vote. Do not vote on November 3rd. Vote now. Vote early, and exercise your right to vote. And, bottom line, I will stand firm. I feel that I feel that Joe Biden did an excellent job tonight. I really felt like he is going to sway how we look at America right now. Just in terms of being bipartisan. So I'm excited to see what happens this election.
Before I send it to you, Mike, Julia, they're asking for your handles.
Oh, go ahead and please follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Treasure of Jules, Jules, Jules. I'll go ahead and drop that in the comments. I tweet a lot and I'm on Instagram a lot, so you can find me there at Treasure of Jules.
All right, over to you, Mike. To any final takeaways from the debate tonight? Any call to action?
Man, I'll keep it short and sweet. I really will say that I gotta give a major shout out to Julia. I think that just throughout these debates, throughout these talks that we've had, I don't think that I was gonna vote, but I'm pretty sure that I will now. Now my ballot is literally 2 feet away from me. It is not open, but I have every intention on opening it. It's important, man. We got to vote, especially if you're living in Seattle, because it's really important. There's going to be a lot of implications for our city, both with like the president and even with our governor. So people are dying. Rewind this tape and go listen to Julia talk about the people in her family that she lost, man. COVID is real. We're losing people. And if we don't switch up who's in office right now, man, we're going to continue to lose lives, man. It's critical right now.
Right, and I,
recording this, right? Because you heard Mike said he was going to vote, and I swayed. So I want that clip, please.
we might put it in the morning show. And Mike, I know you're not so big on social media, but how can people find the South Seattle Emerald?
You can find me on Twitter at Will in Vegas, and the South Seattle Emerald is literally everywhere, man. Just throw us in Google and everything's gonna pop up for you.
Right. And I would say my final thoughts on this is when we talk about the importance of voting, one thing that people don't realize, but right here in the state of Washington, the superintendent of public instruction, I believe that's a position that's up for election. That's the person that decides like the curriculums and things like that for public instruction, for public schools, you know, and so, you know, when people are, all of these things are relative in everyday life, the things that impact you now, I mean, sure, paying taxes and federal taxes, it impacts you in some of these decisions. Clearly, they're coming down from the Supreme Court, it impacts you, but your everyday, you know, whether the potholes on your street get fixed, you know what I'm saying, whether there's infrastructure projects right here in Seattle, the West Seattle Bridge is closed, whether a sheriff will be appointed or be elected, what the curriculum is, you know, in the schools and some everything else. Those things are decided locally. So I want to continue to encourage people. Vote. And you got to remember, the voting day is not November 3rd. The voting happens now. It ends November 3rd. So no matter where you're at on this spectrum here, and a big shout out to everybody who joined us across the political spectrum. We had some great comments tonight, some great insights. And that one comment there from Cece sparked a whole discussion, which was great. And that's why I said, man, we welcome comments from some of everybody. So we're gonna call it a night. Mike Davis, South Seattle Emerald, Julia, Jessie, Converge Media. Thank you for joining me tonight, and we'll be talking to everybody soon. Peace.
Peace.
We're right here at East Precinct. It doesn't get any closer than this right now.
Converge Media produces culturally relevant content for Black and urban audiences. Our coverage is raw, transparent, and objective, praised by community leaders, government officials, and residents. As a small independent media company, we rely on the financial support of individuals and business members to stay on the front lines of the news that's important to you.